Hi, everybody. We will go ahead and get started. We just have a few participants at this time. We received a ton of feedback that folks had conflicts during this time slot. We know it's an incredibly busy time for teachers and educators of all kinds right now. So I'll kind of keep admitting people as they ask to be put on the wait list or ask to be let in from the waiting room. We will plan to record this so that folks can kind of get this content when they have a chance to watch it. So I will start with just a brief welcome. My name is Abby. I'm the Director of Education Services at the Durham Museum. I'm not at the Durham Museum right now. I'm at home. So hopefully you do not at any point hear my dog barking in the background. I tried to keep them busy. We are joined by some amazing panelists all throughout this week. So this evening's workshop is going to be about the COVID pandemic. And speaking a little bit about just kind of what educators might be seeing and going through some possible resources. Tomorrow evening and the evening following that, we do have two additional panels planned, one on teaching virtually and one on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So before we start, I just wanted to give a really big thank you to our planning committee. It was comprised of folks from a variety of organizations, including some of the local school districts and other nonprofits. They're the ones who helped us find our panelists for these events this week, and we're very grateful to them. And then I do also want to thank our sponsors of Teachers Week. So some of you are probably familiar. In the past, we've done Teachers Night. Instead of canceling it this year, we said, what if we change it a little to make it safe and actually make it a bigger event? So that's where these panels came in. And then at the end of the week, we're going to gather information from our panelists, our exhibitors at the event, and those who maybe couldn't be with us at the event, and produce a resource guide that we hope will be helpful for our educators. So we have 4 sponsors on this year's Teachers Week. I keep saying Teachers Night. First, of course, we have MUD, Metropolitan Utilities District. We have First Nebraska Credit Union, Metropolitan Community College, and the Nebraska State Education Association. I believe all 4 of those are multiple year sponsors of the event and have been with us for a while. So we will get right to it. I am actually going to start simply by having our panelists introduce themselves. We had a slight change from our original lineup. So again, I'll let them introduce themselves in a little more detail. But we have Dr. Strong, who is with UNMC, and then Bill Heaston, who is with Completely Kids. I'm still hoping we might have June Bear Noonan join us. She's with the Nebraska Urban Indian Health Coalition. She was hoping to make it, but as everybody kind of does right now, I think we all kind of have our hands full and fires popping up to put out. So we will just start with the first question for our panelists. If you could please just introduce yourself, your position with your organization, and then describe what your experience has been like related to the pandemic, kind of in the context of the community that you work in. So let's start with Dr. Strong, perhaps. She's at the top of my screen, and then we will go to Bill.
Thank you, Abby, for that introduction. And thank you all for being here, for taking time today, and thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Dr. Sharita A. Strong. I am a psychiatrist, assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry here at UNMC. And my new role is Director of Inclusion, and that's a Chief Diversity Officer that I do 50% of the time. I still see patients, I still teach medical students. I'm the preclinical director for 130 medical students. So I'm a clinician, I'm a wife, mother to 2 teenage boys. My boys go to Omaha North. So I'm a product also of Omaha Public Schools, as I graduated from Omaha North also in 1995. So hopefully there's a Viking or 2 in the house. So a few of my teachers from OPS, Mrs. Harrington, Mrs. Richardson, Ms. Carney, Ms. Nelson, Ms. Morrow, Ms. Ray. I've continued to keep in touch with them for the last few years. And most notably, Mr. Haynes. Mr. Haynes was my athletic director when I was in high school, and Mr. Lee, who had the pleasure of attending a meeting with Mr. Lee and Mr. Haynes last week. So I give this background because it's important to amplify our teachers. You all are amazing. I had some amazing teachers who believed in me. They were my safe zones when I didn't have safe space at home. I'm so thankful that there were teachers like them who believed in me and helped me to strive to be my best, like I know a lot of you are doing for your students. And I know it's really a tough time to try to engage with them. But like the saying goes, to the world, you may be one person, but to one person or to that child, you may be the world. And so I know it's hard, again, to connect with your students in this virtual learning space or through a mask, but I know you'll continue to keep up the good work and continue to be amazing. So like Abby was saying, the title today is COVID-19 Resources, and we hope to have a conversation about the stress of COVID-19 and provide some tools. As a psychiatrist and director of inclusion, but we're seeing depression and PTSD rates that mirror catastrophes like 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. So more and more people are reporting depressive symptoms, and not just reporting, but those symptoms are worse than they had been in previous years. And when we talk about COVID-19, of course, we can't forget about the two pandemics, the social and racial injustices. And so we know that that's adding to a lot of the stress that everyone's under right now. And so the majority of my work has been race-based trauma in the community and on our campus. And so just trying to address the mental health needs. There's not enough psychiatrists or mental health providers, much less, Black female or Black people of color in the mental health fields. And so, just encourage your students to go into all kinds of fields, but of course, fields of mental health. So just a brief introduction. I think you gave us like 5 minutes or so. So thank you.
Thank you. Bill is with Completely Kids. Same question to you, sir.
Sure. Again, I just want to also resonate my many thanks for the opportunity to kind of share our experiences here at Completely Kids during these unprecedented times. I am filling in for my boss today, who is Ann Lawless. But I assure you, I'll do my best to fill her shoes. But my role at Completely Kids is Director of Community-Based Programs. I've been there for nearly 10 years here at the organization, working primarily with all of our after-school initiatives, as well as all of our outreach. So in addition to working with Omaha Public Schools, providing before and after-school programming, Completely Kids also provides other services. We operate a weekend food pantry. We have a teen employment program. We provide on-site services to 3 local homeless shelters, providing support to the kids and parents, as well as providing on-site services at the Ronald McDonald House. We also provide mental health programming for our kids, both individual and group therapy work, on-site at our building on 25th and St. Mary's downtown. And in addition, we also provide parent programming, so parent educational opportunities on-site, anything from GED to ESL to Zumba, arts and crafts, really anything to engage the whole family. At Completely Kids, our goal is to work completely for the child. And in order to do that, of course, you have to work with the whole family unit. So our goal is to really ensure that we're providing engaging and enriching opportunities for everyone associated with that child, so they have the best opportunities to move forward. In terms of the pandemic and our experience, wow, I mean, who would have saw this coming? We're basically, as a nonprofit, in addition to just the economics of the situation, we're also really having to consider the ever-changing needs. So in working with the whole child, we've always been there for the academic enrichment, ensuring that, that we're supporting what's being done during the school day, And with school being closed and going virtual, we had to go virtual as well. And the reality is, how many kids are going to want to sit on a computer any longer? They already have to sit there for school. Are they going to spend another hour or two in an after-school program? And I don't blame them. So our numbers really kind of plummeted, and we had to figure out how we were going to serve our kids and families in a different way. And so we've pivoted, and we really tried to reach out and provide food. And we did just that. We had 2 days a week where we had drive-up service here at our site, and we would provide food, cleaning supplies, and activities for the kids to do. Anything from basketballs and footballs to actual little science experiments and arts and crafts, anything to just keep them busy and their minds moving in the positive direction. We also, we have those families that transportation is a barrier. So we also transported food each week to 35 families in addition to some of the other services. So, we really tried our best. We went all telehealth with our mental health services as well. Made sure that we used HIPAA approved technology, and really just tried to reach out to parents. As Dr. Strong said, depression, PTSD, it's critical right now. It's critical. And we have definitely seen that with all of our families as well. As the pandemic continues to change and to shift, we're going to continue to change and to shift. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, and as we go on into question number 2 later. But yeah, it's crazy times. I applaud all of your efforts. I mean, doing virtual programming, it sucks, quite honestly. It's hard. So I definitely commend you as teachers, for all the hard work that you're putting in. So thank you.
Thank you both. At the museum, we're certainly seeing obviously a different school year than we're used to, but you both, and obviously the educators joining us, are really on the front lines of everything going on with the youth in our community. And as Bill said, we're going to kind of talk more in the next couple questions about resources and what we're seeing and what you might be seeing. So we will jump to the second question, which is also for Bill at Completely Kids. And that question is kind of as we just alluded to, if from kind of the social work and again that frontline aspect, if you can speak a little more to the effects that you're seeing on children, and with that, what can educators be looking for to help identify effects from the pandemic that we might be seeing? Sure,
and and just to put this little, just a little disclaimer. That's the word I was looking for. Disclaimer. We're only working with a very smaller, specific set of kids. I forgot to mention we are only in 6 OPS sites, 6 elementary sites, and then 2 middle school sites. And then we also have our main facility on 25th and St. Mary's. So we serve about 2,000 kids in normal time, pre-pandemic times each day. So that number has decreased a bit. So we're looking at a smaller percentage, so total disclaimer there. But what we've really seen, I think, is really mirrors what's going on in the community in general. And that is more issues with anxiety and depression, big time. And so we have actually hired more part-time therapists, licensed therapists, to conduct mindfulness groups for our kids virtually, just to try to give them an outlet in a safe space to unwind, to clear their mind, to be mindful in the moment so that they're able to recharge. And so we've seen that as number one. Scarily enough, we've also seen more suicidal ideations coming, especially from our middle school sites, which that's not something that we generally would have dealt with as much. And I'm not really sure if it's because there's more of a disconnect from the school. Normally some of those behaviors or some of those alarms would have probably been displayed during the school day. Well, now they're at home. or they're able to come through the drive, or they've been able to come up to our facility to pick things up, and they've been able to talk with some of our therapists in person and kind of display some of those concerns, which definitely, man, it's scary. It's scary when you see an uptick in that, for sure. I think also what we've seen with the effects of kids is it's just plain old fatigue. I think it's what a lot of us are dealing with is fatigue from the pandemic, but not only just the pandemic, but just the way our country has been shaped for so long with the racial injustice. And we here at Completely Kids have had some of a personal connection with the James Scarlett case and everything that was really happening right here at our own front doorsteps. And that definitely reverberates out into our community and into our kids and into their homes. And I think that we've tried to be as sensitive as possible to really trying to connect to those needs. But it's hard, and I think it's those kids feel it, and they feel what's going on in our community as a whole. And so we've really been pushing the mental health component, really trying to be a support and a friend and an ally as everything's kind of been moving forward as well. I think the other piece too, in terms of the fatigue, is these kids, as well as yourself as teachers, when you're sitting in front of a screen for as long as you are, wow, I mean, I'm sure your eyes are just rolling back inside your head at some point. And here at Completely Kids, we have been providing all-day programming in person to a certain number of kids to maintain safety. But a lot of times we see those kids just want to lay down or take a quick nap. And so one thing that we've really kind of also implemented is just like a quiet corner space where there's little busy bags or books or blankets or whatever they need to just go and zone out and take a break. I know they still need to be signed in. I know all the rules regarding that, but I think the reality is that our kids need a break, just as any human would need a break from the screen and from those times. What also has been really cool in terms of resources and in terms of the kids is the alarming support from other nonprofits and other partners that we've worked with, such as the Durham Museum, Omaha Children's Museum. I mean, it's amazing, like just the level of work being put in to reach our kids, even if it's virtually, to ensure that they're getting the quality opportunities and experiences that they deserve. And so I'm super proud to be a part of the Omaha community. I think that everything that we're trying to do is in the best interest of our kids. And so I think that's something we should all be very, very proud of.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. You made a lot of great points, and one of them before we move on that I have to add to is it's funny that you said some of the things you did in bringing up other things that we are dealing with. You cannot separate all those, and that's certainly was never our intention with these panels, but by trying to cover those topics, it was so interesting how immediately when we started actually planning the questions and the immense overlap. And we knew that going into it, but wanted to try to represent these kind of front of mind topics. But of course, in our head and in our hearts, they are very much not separated. And that's the same for our kiddos as well. And the screen time is certainly, I know I'm feeling it too. I would rather be able to be in a room with you all for sure. Yeah.
I just wanted to add a couple of points on that. So when we talk about, our children and their needs, I like to use the framework of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so when we think about what's happening in our communities, we're, talking about teaching our children, but a lot of, are they faced with eviction? Are they faced with, needing the resources that Bill is providing with food insecurity? And so we have to keep in mind that, from a teacher perspective, trying to teach the children and wondering why the children aren't engaged and we're all zoomed out, what's going on, trying to recognize that these kids, if they don't have their basic needs met, then how can they focus? How can they worry about school when their basic needs, their basic safety, if they're a child, a person of color, and they're a child or a young woman, and they see the news that, about Breonna Taylor, and they see these kinds of things. If they're thinking about these things, how can they focus on school? And so I think we just have to just remember, if we're not getting our basic needs met, how can we climb that ladder to self-actualization, to learn, to grow like we should be growing?
Well said.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, kind of on that note, we were, I'll start with Dr. Strong here, but again, Bill, if you have anything to add, because I know Completely Kids does do a lot of work with families. So kind of the same question for adults, and we've touched on it a little bit, that mental health. But what effects are we seeing, immediately in adults and perhaps more long-term? I suppose we don't know that yet, but and then what do you think educators can be looking for in parents? Or even in themselves as they cope with and try to help students through the pandemic?
So I think what we're seeing is called collective grief. So we're in this space where we've dealt with so many losses. Now, of course, some people have actually lost physical loved ones, but there's so many other symbolic losses that we've had, whether it's loss of routine, loss of the ability to go to church and worship, or loss of the ability to just go have a meal and feel safe, loss of safety. So there's so many losses of the ability to travel. During the summer times, especially the teachers, they take off a lot of them take off the summer, and they probably use that time maybe to go travel and spend time with friends and family in other areas. And we've been faced with all of these losses all at once. And then the anticipatory, we have the losses that we've experienced, but the anticipatory grief, the anticipatory losses. And regardless of what the loss is, grief is a universal type of experience, despite the personal nature of the loss and what the loss means to us. But regardless, we go through those stages of grief. So stages of grief, we have denial, we have anger. It's easier as an emotion to express anger than it is to express sadness, which is depression. Sadness is another one. And then bargaining and acceptance. And so just when you think you're like, okay, I'm accepting this new normal, then something else happens. Or I'm accepting the stage that I'm in, then something else happens. And so regardless of the stage that we're in, we have to recognize that our body is going to do grief work. It's going to process through these losses. And it's a matter of how we're naming it. We have to be able to name what we're going through so that we can process through it and give ourselves that grace. If we don't accept it fully, what's going on, that's okay. If we're angry about it, it's okay. Maybe it's a single person that's used to being able to go out and mingle, but can't mingle like they used to be able to mingle because it's, just a huge safety concern, or someone who has pre-existing health conditions and high risk. So there's just so many different things. And so recognizing that as we go through those stages, in those stages, of course, is depression. So thinking about the symptoms of depression, how depression can manifest. Like I had mentioned before, there was an article recently that talked about depression and PTSD rates that are higher than they had been in previous years. And so it was talking about if a person had symptoms of depression, it may be one symptom, but now there are like 3 and 4 and 5 symptoms. And so what are those symptoms? What do they look like? Things to look for: sleep, changes in sleep. That's one of the biggest, most common complaints in a psychiatrist's office. Doc, I can't sleep. Well, it's like, well, what else is going on? Maybe it's stress. So sleep, changes in appetite, changes in energy, of course, changes in mood, but it may not be just I'm sad. It may be I'm irritable. Maybe it's manifesting as anger. Again, is it sadness, depression, or is a person truly grieving and the stress that is on their body? And one of the most significant symptoms, Bill had mentioned this, also seeing suicidality in children. I mean, we're seeing suicidality rates go up in not just, I mean, teachers, healthcare workers, frontline workers, we can't underestimate, the need for, resources. We need more psychiatrists, we need more mental health providers, but also what Bill had said, we've transitioned well to be able to do Zoom appointments, some kind of web-based appointments that is HIPAA compliant. Like Bill said, I appreciate you for saying that, so that people know that those resources are available to still be able to see your provider or to engage with provider, and even support groups. There are support groups. We have to stay connected in this grief area that we're in, and not being able to hug. Emotionally, we disconnect because it's too hard to think about, oh, I can't hug grandma when I go to the nursing home. I can't even go to the nursing home. And think about all of the layers. There's so many layers of the things that we're going through. And just sometimes we just have to take a step back and just allow ourselves to feel that grief, feel that pain, and cycle through those stages, and just do the work that helps us to feel better.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think we can all identify. I was having a hard time not furiously nodding with everything our panelists have said, because I think that certainly hits the nail on the head of what we're all dealing with. And then, of course, everyone has their own factors to add to that. But we know our educators have the factor of trying to teach through this, whether virtually or in person. So what we would like to do, we are about halfway through here. What we would like to do, because we have a little bit smaller group, we don't really need to use the breakout rooms. I will just have the caveat that we are recording this in hopes that we can share. However, typically breakout rooms are not recorded on a Zoom, so if someone does not want to be recorded, we will plan to edit out the group discussion part when we do share the recording. So please don't feel like you can't jump in. I would also say we could use this time for questions that you might have of the panelists, or really just for the group. But we'll start with the discussion questions that we had planned. And then if you have any questions for the panelists, and then just so you know, we will wrap up the workshop by asking both of our panelists to kind of share a final thought or piece of advice or resource for teachers. We know this is a heavy topic, certainly. So I'm going to go ahead and I will put the questions in the chat. But since we don't need to do it as breakout rooms, I will also just read them aloud. So there's kind of two sets of questions, I guess. So the first being, what has your experience been with COVID as an educator, with students perhaps? What are you seeing in your classroom, and what are you seeing with families? And then I'll just read the second one, and we can just kind of, if anyone wants to jump in, what community resources have you found helpful, maybe that we haven't mentioned? And just as important, I think, to discuss what's missing in our community right now, what voids haven't maybe you seen filled. So I'm gonna just wait and see if anybody wants to jump in. I know we're a small group, so. You are also welcome to just share in the chat. We'll give folks a couple minutes. That sounds like a great idea, Dr. Strong. Please.
Okay, so I asked Abby if I could share something on decision fatigue, something that was introduced to me probably by my former chairman. I read a very long article. I believe it was either in LA Times or the New York Times, and kind of setting the stage. There were three people on that were meeting with the parole board, and they had similar offenses, and they found out that the judges would parole them based on the time of the day. So the person that got paroled would get paroled if they saw the judge at 8:30 a.m. The ones that came to the judge at right after lunch was okay, and he got paroled, but the one later in the day did not get paroled. And the studies that they showed was that throughout the day, we make so many different decisions. We are overloaded with just so much stuff. And toward the end of the day, we don't have the resolve to make those decisions. And we don't want to make an impulsive decision, which sometimes happens, or we just don't do anything. And so one of the good examples is shop till you drop. So you shop, shop, shop. And toward the end of that shopping, I'm not a person that likes to shop anymore. And I think I realize is because there's too many decisions. There's too many things I have to think about. And so they talked about, when we shop till we drop, toward the end, we just get tired and we just start buying stuff. If you've ever noticed that's a thing. Well, they also talked about, our families are poorer families, and Bill, you may be familiar with this, but they talked about our poorer families, where the families, they go to the grocery store and they have to choose between buying soap and buying toothpaste, or buying toothpaste and buying food. And so they tend to make bad choices, not because they don't know how to make the choices. It's because the choices that they have to make are so daunting that they have to make over and over and over. Do I pay my rent or do I buy groceries? Okay, I'm going to have a Cinnabon because in that moment, that Cinnabon makes me feel better. And I'm going to buy the Cinnabon, and I'm not going to have enough money to buy all the things that I need to buy because of all of those decisions. I'm overwhelmed. I have to make too many decisions, and that's how it manifests. So translation to my life, I order groceries online, and my teenage sons have taken over the grocery shopping. I don't want to grocery shop anymore. I don't want to go on. I have too many decisions that I have to make every day. And so I offloaded that. Well, the fun part of that is my 16-year-old is a vegetarian, and he bought, we're not sure if it was $4 on sale or if it truly was an $8 bottle of organic syrup. So I'm not sure if I'm going to allow him. And he bought 20 cans of black beans. He bought some of the other things that we needed. But then my other son, he's the one that went on and said, Mom, did you know Mason bought all this stuff? And I said, no, but I didn't care. We have food to eat. There's worse things for me to complain about. I just won't let him be the one to buy groceries. So I just wanted to introduce that topic of decision fatigue and recognize that, the space that we're in, we have to make so many different decisions, and it just weighs on us. It does. When you're trying to teach our students in such a different environment, and it's just really taxing. You can't interact and engage like you used to. Some people are just thriving in this space where they don't have to interact with people, but some of us extroverts, it's really, really hard. So I just wanted to give just a few thoughts on what's called decision fatigue.
I love that, Dr. Strong. We've seen that a lot in our food distribution. We have parents that'll come 2 hours before we give food out just to ensure that they get food, because we just give out as much as we can until it's gone. And with that, just have seen really patience gone, tempers. We have had to issue some security to help us with some of the food distribution, because we've had instances of parents getting into verbal arguments, cutting in line, just a lot of really, really ugly things, but really just being a consequence of that fatigue, of being exhausted and having to stand in line for 2 hours just to get your basic necessity. And so, if you're in that position where you're willing to, sit out in the cold, rain, hot, whatever, for 2 hours just to get some bread and cereal, imagine what all the other decisions in your life can do to you and overwhelm you, especially even when it comes to school. We communicate a lot with our teachers, and they'll call and sometimes they'll say like, hey, that kid's not signed on, or hey, can you make sure that they get their assignment done because mom isn't returning my phone call or my emails, is not getting back to me. We hear that all the time, and part of our job is loving to help support the kid and the teachers so that they can be successful. But I always wonder, wow, if you're what's mom got going on today that makes her unable to respond to the teacher. And I know a lot of us, we might go right to the, oh, she doesn't care, or it's not a priority. But really, it's probably something else, and it's probably something a lot deeper. And it could be all those other decisions and things she has to face each day. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Strong. That was great.
One other point, as our stress goes up, our empathy for other people and other situations tends to go down. It's a direct correlation.
So what, Dr. Strong, what can we do if we recognize in ourselves or somebody we know that decision fatigue? How can you fight that?
So, toward the end of the day, that was one of the things that they talked about, eating regularly. Sometimes when we're home, we're working from home or working in whatever environments, we tend to neglect our self-care. And they said that one of the simple solutions is just eating regularly and keeping our blood sugar regular, because it noted that the judges after lunch, they tended to make a better decision right after lunch than at the end of the day. And so eating regularly, of course, making sure that we manage our stress. When I talk about making decisions, being able to say no, one of the things that I often will say is that if you can say no, you're still saying no to something. So if you're saying yes, Bill was asked by his boss to do this presentation today, this panel presentation, and so Bill said yes, but maybe Bill had to say no to picking his kid up early or something today, or something else that he had going on. So recognize that, when you are choosing to say yes and not to say no to something that you think you should say no to, you're still saying no to something else. And sometimes that no is to ourselves and to our own self-care. And so I just want to remind people that, we say this all the time, but we just have to continue to preach it, practice it, but recognize that it's not a perfect science. We're not always going to do the exact thing that we're supposed to do, but we strive to be better every day. We strive to do better tomorrow than we did today. Maybe we woke up late, or maybe we rushed to work today. Well, then tomorrow we're going to try to come in a little bit earlier and not log in right at 7:59 when the Zoom starts at 8 o'clock. Establishing routines, I think, is really important, whether that's a morning routine, whether that's a night routine to help with sleep. Sleep is important. And some of those basic things, exercising, slowing down. Right now we're in a season where life isn't as busy, and it's amazing to hear how many people are actually slowing down and reflecting and journaling, just reflecting on, because we'll always remember 2020. Well, what will it look like? What will be, with all of the losses, what will be the gains that we will remember so many years down the road? So just a few things. I have lots of things. Making lists, getting things done is a hashtag GTD. I forget the gentleman's name, but he has a whole system, while we're in this space, trying to get more organized and, thinking positive, keeping things in perspective, having hope that things are going to get better.
Well said. Thank you. Before we wrap up with kind of some final words, we did have a question in the chat that I thought was kind of interesting. One of our participants is describing that they have a student that kind of just thinks school isn't necessary now because it's not that gathering place for meeting with friends and teachers directly. And this student, it sounds like, is refusing to participate in a virtual learning environment. Our participants wondering if there's any advice about how to kind of explain, to this student, and I'm sure we've all kind of had this happen, what's going on and why they should still participate.
I can speak a little bit to that, just because we struggle to try to engage our kids virtually. And one thing that we've done is just giving them a space to actually interact with each other. So it doesn't have to be all business when they come online or come virtually. So whether that's they can have their own breakout room where they can just kind of, hang out, like almost like a lunchtime hangout, just providing them some social forum within your own network, I think is super important. So that you're just going to have to mix the business with some of the fun and letting them have that social outlet.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think that's a great point. I'm sorry, I don't remember the source, but I heard some statistic about a percentage of how productive you are doing things virtually versus the way we're used to doing them. And I remember being shocked by the number, even though I knew it would be a rough number. And I'll add to what Bill said. We did virtual summer camps. First year we've tried it, we had to, obviously with the first year we tried it, we didn't have a lot of time to kind of put together what the program would look like, but luckily we had some experience with virtual field trips and virtual learning in a museum setting prior. And it was a busy but wonderful experience. Our parents seemed grateful, kids had fun, it seemed overall positive. But one thing I'll share, and we tried everything we could think of, but we had one question on our survey where we asked parents to rate the statement, my camper, it was something like, my camper connected with other campers during this virtual camp. And it was consistently the lowest rating on the survey. And at some point in the summer, we said, we almost kind of have to be okay with that. We can definitely continue to try to build in, just like Bill said, build in that time for them to just talk, especially with a camp experience. I know it's very different than the classroom. You have so much to cover. We built that time in, we tried this and that. But at some point, we also just had to say to ourselves, maybe this is just good for us to know. It's going to be harder for kids to connect with each other virtually. And that's probably nothing groundbreaking, but I know for us, it was an interesting challenge this summer. So I think we will go ahead and ask our panelists for a couple of closing thoughts, advice. Again, I know this is a heavy topic, but we do hope to end on a hopeful note. Dr. Strong mentioned hope, and I love that. And then I will, following that, I will wrap up with just making sure everybody knows about other resources we have coming up yet this week. Dr. Strong, you want to start?
Sure. One of the things that I've also seen in this space is that people are getting more in tuned with who they are. And so if you have that energy, just from, whatever is going on, if you have that energy, people are taking things like Myers-Briggs, there's personality tests, there's your colors test, there's lots of different multiple intelligences. There's lots of different tests that we can do that gives us more information about who we are and how we interact with the world, because we know that when this is all said and done, we talk about a new normal. Well, when this is all said and done, things are going to be different. And what is that going to look like for us interpersonally, for ourselves? And so I think it's really encouraging that people are reflecting on who they are and how they interact with their coworkers when they get back to work, or with their families. So I just wanted to encourage folks to do that. If you have that space, that energy to be able to do that, because as you're doing that, you're also taking an introspective look at how you're feeling, how you're doing. And if you feel like you need mental health services, please reach out. If you feel like, because sometimes people wonder, well, what does that look like? If you have sufficient number of symptoms, if you will, where you feel like you can't function, because sometimes people may have trouble sleeping, they may have loss of interest, but if you have a bunch of those symptoms, you can't eat, no energy, and it affects your daily function. If you have these things and it affects your daily function, definitely, if you have suicidal thoughts, reach out. There's lots of folks that are more than willing to be there to support you, whether it's a therapist and I even tell folks to reach out to their primary care physician. They can they can do an evaluation and start them on you on medication if they see a need. But also just being able to talk about it with someone, I think is really impactful. And then, like I said, hope, faith, and love. Just have to continue to hope that things are going to get better. Faith in yourself and in humanity, and just continue to have the love that you currently have.
That was great. How am I going to follow that up?
I was just going to say, over to you, Bill.
That was so great. Yeah, that was so great. I think, just one thing I would like to impart before this is done is just how important your role as a teacher is, now more than ever. And I know that a lot of times in the profession that you're in, the profession I'm in as a social worker, a lot of times we get a lot of lip service where it's like, oh, your job is so important, and oh, you're so wonderful. You just must be so proud of yourself or feel so good every day. And I mean, the reality is that we don't necessarily feel great every day. It's hard work, but it's worth it. And it's work that you're called to. And you got to listen to that and hold true to that. And know that you're not alone, and that there's a lot of other people who are here to support you throughout the process. So thank you for everything that you're doing, especially during these hard times. One resource that I do want to leave, and I'm going to put it in the chat as well, is just the Kim Foundation, which is a local foundation here in Omaha. They are starting more of a movement called More Tomorrows. And it's just kind of a movement to ensure that people are aware of the warning signs for people dealing with depression and who have suicidal ideations. So I'm going to leave that down in the chat so that you can check out at your own leisure. But it's a really good resource regarding that topic. So thanks for everything.
So thank you both so much. I'm sure we could be here all night if we listed all of the resources just that you two are aware of. I appreciate both of you mentioning other community resources. Bill did mention there's a lot of the arts and culture organizations are sure trying to meet teachers' needs. I was explaining to somebody I was talking to, we have the Jim Henson exhibit coming up, and they asked me, what are schools there doing? And I said every district in the metro is doing something a little bit different. Nobody quite has the same plan. And so I know teachers watching this live, but also the recording when we post it, hopefully with the panel tonight and the next 2 nights, you'll kind of find bits and pieces that do apply to you. Everybody is in such a unique situation. So our plan for the rest of this week, we again have panels again tomorrow night and Wednesday night. Our topics are teaching virtually and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We do have several teachers signed up for both of those evenings. This was our one that had a little bit less live attendance. We had lots of folks that Monday nights were just not good for them, and so they're planning to watch the recording. But please do get signed up for those if you aren't already. And then if you are comfortable doing so, we would love to have any of you at our on-site event on Friday. We do feel very good about the safety precautions that are in place. This is not in the official marketing, but I keep describing it to people as a giant board game through the museum. We're going to make it a really fun experience. That's a one-way path, even though I know it's a little different from teachers' nights in the past, perhaps a little bit less mingling, but it's still going to be a lot of fun. So either way, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Strong. And Bill Houston with Completely Kids. I know you guys put a lot of work into your answers and everything that you do, and we're very grateful. So I will wrap it up. If you are not signed up for any of those events, visit our website, durhammuseum.org. Thank you again, everybody, and have a wonderful night.